So in the last class we saw what is the difference between a project, a program and a portfolio, and we also saw what are sub projects. Okay, in today's class we will look into some more aspects of project management. So what is this project management office? See, first thing you need to understand, today most of the companies would have set up this project management office. Almost 85 to 90% of the companies will have a PMO. That means if a company is doing multiple projects, they will have one coordinating platform, and that coordinating platform is called project management office. So what is the main functionality of a project management office? PMO oversees management of projects, programs, or a combination of both. It is a monitoring authority, it's a controlling authority. So when there are multiple projects which are grouped into programs, so there will be a project management office which will basically oversee the execution of all projects. So that is one thing you need to understand in terms of PMO. It shares and coordinate resources. So basically it is a repository of knowledge and resources. So it will help you to get some resources, it will help you to share resources, and it is the responsibility of the PMO to develop project management methodology and best practices and standards. So whenever you are doing a project, it is the project management office which will tell you what are the best project management practices which can be applied to this particular project, and it is centralized. It is centralized. That means all the projects will come under the umbrella of project management office. So setting up of a PMO is a very crucial to the success of any organizations. Even today, if you take any big organizations which have multiple projects, those organizations will have a body called as PMO. PMO stands for Project Management Office. So if there are multiple projects which are happening in your organization, all the multiple projects will be under the control of the PMO. Now PMO oversees management of projects. Programs are a combination of both. That means we know that projects are combined as programs. Why do we combine projects into programs? Just to have a better control over the projects. Now this controlling can further be fine-tuned by a PMO. So PMO is the single authority which actually oversees the management of all project management office, all project management activities. Sometimes PMO is also responsible for appointing the project manager to the project. That is also an important aspect. So in an organization which gets multiple number of projects, who should be allocated the project manager? It is the PMO who allocates the project manager. And it will also help you in planning, prioritization and execution of projects and sub-projects. Prioritization of projects are also important. See, when you have multiple projects which is inside your organization, which projects should be taken on high priority, which projects should be taken on low priority or medium priority, it is actually decided by the PMO. So PMO decides which project will be taken on high priority. It depends upon the client, the customer, the scope, the time and so many other things. So all these things are handled by the PMO. So what is the main feature of PMO? It shares and coordinate resources. We know this. It is centralized configuration management for all projects. So whenever you are talking of multiple projects, if you have one central governing authority, that central governing authority is called as a PMO, which is called as a project management office. So these are some of the features of PMO, and you can see that it is also having centralized repository and management for shared and unique risk. This is very important. Since PMO is handling multiple projects, see, one thing you should understand, after we complete every project, we document one important document that is called as lessons learned document. What is this lessons learned document? It's a document which will make us understand what are the new lessons we learned out of this project. See, I told you that every project is unique. Every project will have a definite deliverable. When you are executing the project, you may come across various situations, and you will put across your skills in order to overcome those situations and problems. You would have identified risks. You would have overcome those risks. So all these are nothing but lessons learned. So you have to document it in some place, so that if a similar kind of situation comes in another project, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have to just go back and refer the lessons learned document and see how did I mitigate the risk which had appeared in my earlier project. So all these lessons learned document will actually be held with project management office. So that means whenever you have a problem, you can always refer to the PMO's repository and see if any such kind of problem had occurred in any of the projects before, and what was the solution to that particular project, and you can try and implement the same kind of solution to your project as well. So that is why we call it as central repository and management for shared and unique risk. And it's a central coordination of communication management. Communication strategy is very important. See, we are going to learn one separate knowledge area as called project communication management. That means when you are in a project, what status you are supposed to send to whom. Most of us do not know this. If I have to send a status report to somebody, is it that I have to send status report to everybody, or it is that you have to filter it to some people and send? So we are going to learn a beautiful matrix called as a RACI matrix. I will tell you what is a RACI matrix later. But this communication coordination, like who should what is the methodology of communication, how should be your communication strategy for that particular project, is actually centralized through project management office. So now you know the importance of project management office. Project management office, plays a key role in ensuring the success of projects and thereby the success of program as well. And one more important advantage of a PMO is it's a mentoring platform for project managers. See, generally today it has become a trend in any organization that you have a mentor-mentee relationship. So sometimes a PMO is going to run training programs. Probably they will ensure that they will run a PMP training program to make sure that all project managers are PMP certified. And moreover, it will also help you in monitoring of overall project quality standards between the project manager and any internal or external quality person or standards organization. For example, you may have an ISO 9001 quality standard in your organization. So now you have to map that ISO 9001 with your project management standard. So that also is done by PMO. So you know that PMO is now working like a management representative for managing all projects within a program and sometimes programs as well. So the creation of a PMO and people who are working inside the PMO and administering of PMO plays a crucial role to ensure the success of any organization. So it will give one kind of an simple authority or a central authority which helps you to govern the projects across the entire organizations which is handling into multiple projects. So that is the basic idea of having a PMO office. Next is a very important concept which you have to learn. It is called as the project life cycle. So what is a life cycle? Life cycle is nothing but what are the stages a project passes right from the introduction to implementation. See, we call it as inception to implementation. Inception means starting of a project. Implementation means generally ending of a project. So from starting to ending, what and all phases it undergoes is called as a life cycle. So these phases sometimes can be sequential. or sometimes it can overlap. So let me give you one simple example. So let's say that you are constructing a house. The first and the foremost thing is you are leveling the ground. That is the first phase. After leveling the ground, you put the foundation. That is the second phase. Now, can you put the foundation before leveling the ground? It is not possible. So we say that it's a sequential process. That means foundation phase will only happen after leveling the ground phase. After the foundation is erected, then it is the time for putting down the walls. Now once walls has been put up, okay, what happens is when you are constructing a big house, when you are putting the walls in one particular area, you can do plastering on the another area. So that means erecting the walls and doing the plastering may not be sequential, okay, it can overlap. So like this, sometimes the phases can be sequential or sometimes the phases can overlap. So that you need to understand in any project. See, for example, when you are developing a software, designing is one stage, coding is another stage. After coding, testing is another stage, and after testing there are other stages. So when you are designing and coding, when the coding is going on, you can do documentation also. So documentation and coding, they are not that tightly related to each other, so they can basically overlap. So like this, you need to understand which stages overlap, which stages do not overlap, whether there is a tight relationship between one stage and another stage. Tight relationship means you cannot continue the next stage unless and until you have completed the previous stage. So those things you need to understand in a project. So what are the general life cycle phases of a project? It depends in size and complexity, you know this. If you look at a very generic view, there are 4 phases which are very important. One is starting the project. Any project has to start, that is phase 1. After starting the project, what will you do next? You do organizing and preparing, that is phase 2. After doing organizing and preparing, what do you do next? You carry out the project work. So when I say carry out the project work, it looks very simple here, but it involves so many other sub stages. So let's not worry about all those sub stages. Now we'll understand that you are carrying out the project work. And finally you are closing the project. So these are the basic 4 stages of your project. Now you should understand this diagram very carefully. So you have put 2 parameters. One is time, which is on the x-axis, cost and staffing level, which is on the y-axis. Now whatever stages I mentioned here, starting the project, organizing and preparing, carrying out the project work and closing the project, they are all mentioned here. Now all these happens over a time. So understand the first stage is starting the project. And when you are starting the project, look at the cost and the staffing level, it is very less. So how many number of resources you require to start a project? You don't require that many number of resources. Probably you may require 1 or 2 resources, that's all. That is when you are just initiating the project. But as you are moving further over time, once you are coming to this phase called organizing and preparing, see how many resources you require. Cost is increasing and staffing level is also increasing. Then once you have completed this phase called organizing and preparing, then you are carrying out the work. This is the time where you require maximum number of resources in your project, and this is the time where the cost incurred is more. And finally, once you are closing the project, you don't require that many number of resources. It is very simple. See, you want to construct a house. You are starting the project. At that time, you are only communicating with the contractor. Contractor doesn't communicate with electrician, mason, plumber and all. So the resources are very less. Now when you go to organizing and preparing, the resources becomes more. Probably you may want to have a design. So that means a resource called architect will come into picture. So he will come and give you the prototype. Now you are there, a contractor is there, an architect is there. Now when you approve the design, then when you are in the actual process of carrying out the work, then more number of resources come into picture. Masons may come, okay, and subcontractors may come. Finally, your plumber may come, electrician may come, and you have false roofing people may come, carpenter may come, painter may come. All these are resources. That is when the project is going on. But when you are closing the project, that is when you are doing the housewarming ceremony, again your resources are less. So when is the project cost, when is the project going to incur more cost? It is in this stage. In which stage? When you are carrying out the work. So in this stage, you are going to incur more cost, you are going to incur more resources, and when you are closing the project, that is when you are archiving the project documents. What is the meaning of archiving? I told you that after every project you are going to do a lessons learned documentation. So when you are archiving all the project documents to the repository, that is when you are submitting to the centralized repository called a PMO, at that time the cost incurred is very less. So this is the general cycle in terms of cost and staffing levels across the project in terms of the various phases of your project. The next is you need to also understand what is the cost and staffing levels across project life cycle. This also is very important. See, whenever you talk of project, we talk of one word. We call that word as stakeholder influence. You should always remember this word stakeholder. So who are stakeholders? Stakeholders could be persons, or it could be organizations who are affected by your project. Anybody who is affected by your project are called as stakeholders. And I told you in the last class only, the stakeholders could be either positive stakeholders or negative stakeholders. The positive stakeholders are people who will propose your project. Negative stakeholders are those people who oppose your project. Let me give a simple example. See, in your company, for managing projects, you are all using Excel. All the project managers are using Excel, or the team members are using Excel. So Excel is the only application where you are using for maintaining trackers, for sending status report, for managing project plans, everything. Suddenly your organization decides that henceforth we will remove this Excel and we will bring in an project management information system, PMIS, something like MS Office or Primavera. PMIS is exclusively done for managing projects. Now that is a project. Now you are allocated as a project manager to implement PMIS as a new project management technique or tool for managing and tracking the projects across your organization. So you will be responsible for implementing this. Immediately you send an email that I am going to be responsible for this project. So people will start sending you the replies. Some project managers and team leaders and resources say, yes, it's a great initiative. But some say, no, Excel only is doing, we are very good with Excel. We don't want to change from Excel to any other PMIS. So what is the necessity of going to PMIS? So they are negative stakeholders. So people who say, okay, that's a really good initiative, let's go with a new PMIS, they are positive stakeholders. Now, if you have more number of negative stakeholders, you have to convince them. This is what I told you, conflict management in the last class. So you have to convince them and tell them what are the advantages you are going to get when you actually implement a new PMIS rather than following the old Excel legacy system. So that is again the skill which is required by a project manager. So now you can see that there are again two axes. One is called project time and second one is called the degree. So now when you are in the starting stage of the project, so here you are in the starting stage, which is very important. This is my starting stage of the project. In this starting stage, what is important here is the cost is very less of my project. The cost is very less. Why the cost is very less? Because there are no resources. You are only the resource who is just starting the project. The cost is very less. But look at the stakeholder influence, it is very high. Now the customer is giving you the project. The customer will have high expectations from your project. So his expectations are very high, but the cost is very less. As the project goes, the customer keeps on giving requirements. That means once he kept on giving requirements, and once you are starting working on those requirements, his expectations is reducing, but your cost is increasing. The reason is you are implementing the project or you are executing the project. Okay, or you can say involvement. See, when you are constructing a house, your involvement is very much high in the beginning, but once the time passes, what happens? Your involvement reduces, and what happens? The contractor's cost increases, because what happens? He has to put in more resources. That is why we have two curves like this. One is the stakeholder influence, and second one is the cost of changes. And initially the uncertainty will be very high, because stakeholder is very uncertain about what is that he wants. Initially, unless and until you come to a proper understanding, this is called as requirements gathering process. Initially, understanding requirements may not be that easy. He will try to communicate with you. You may not understand. Then you will make one prototype and give it to him. So he will see the prototype and he will make some changes. So like this, initially for few meetings, the uncertainty is very high, because still the proper requirements has not been understood by you, which is given by a stakeholder. So that means what? Uncertainty is very high, risk is very high. So as the requirements becomes more clear and clear and clear as the project progresses, see, we call this as a progressive elaboration. Progressive elaboration means as the project progresses, requirements becomes more and more and more smooth. So that means the influence of the stakeholder reduces, but from your side, the cost of implementing those requirements increases. So this is a graph which shows you cost and staffing levels across project life cycle. Very important concept. Now what we will do? We will understand what is the difference between a product versus project life cycle. So there are product oriented companies. So their main job is to release products, like Apple, they release product, HP, they release products. So if you have a product oriented company, their life cycle will be little different. We shall see what is the life cycle of a product oriented company. Now the last product life cycle phase for a product is generally the product's retirement. Now this is very important. See, first you have to initiate one product. For example, let's say Maruti, we will take old example. They initiated a product called 800. First they conceptualized that we need to bring a car which is suitable for a family, which can be affordable by everybody. So we will call it as Maruti 800. So that is the starting of the product. Then they did some R&D. They came out with the design, second phase of that product. Third, they found out a marketing strategy in order to advertise that particular product. Then suddenly the market got momentum. The cars was getting sold. Then they came to know what and all new features we need to introduce for next versions of Maruti 800. So that also happened. After few years, then they decided we'll scrap Maruti 800 because it is no longer accepted by your customer. That stage is called as a retirement stage. So what is the product retirement stage? Product retirement stage is a stage where now it is high time that we stop this product because it is not gaining the market momentum. So the last product life cycle phase for a product is generally product's retirement. So at the retirement stage, the product will come to a standstill. So now Maruti no longer manufactures 800 cars. So that is the one thing you need to understand. So now what and all it contains? The first thing is you have to ensure that your product also has got life cycle. So you can see here some facets of the product life cycle lend themselves to being run as projects. Now this is very important. You need to understand. First, performing a feasibility study. So let's say that all the people in top people in a car manufacturing company will propose one particular idea. What is that idea? So let's introduce solar cars in the market. That's an idea which came out. So now once the idea comes out, can they immediately implement it? No. What is that they are need to do? They need to perform a feasibility study. Whether this project is feasible or not, whether it is economically feasible, whether it is socially feasible, whether it is technically feasible, whether it is operationally feasible, whether it is legally feasible. Legally, electrical cars are really feasible or not in India. Is it feasible technically? Is it feasible socially? Now each one could be a project. So I told you that a project is a temporary endeavor which helps you to create a unique product, service or a result. Now making this feasibility report itself is a project. So in this product life cycle, performing a feasibility study is one phase. This phase is taken as a project. So they will give that project to somebody. What is their responsibility? To perform a feasibility report. So they will go to the market. They will perform, they'll circulate questionnaires, they'll try and get consensus from many people. They'll make one feasibility report and give it to the management. So based upon that feasibility report, the management will think whether to go ahead with the project or scrap the project. If they think that this product called solar vehicles can be introduced in India, then they will go to the next stage of product development, which is called as a conducting market research, then running the advertising campaign, installing a product, holding focus groups. So they'll go to other cycles, and each of this could be a project again. So this is a life cycle, product versus project life cycle. That means what? To release a product will have multiple phases, and each phase of a project could be a project life cycle. See, let us take the first phase. What is that? Performing a feasibility study. This performing a feasibility study can have 4 phases. What is that? Starting a feasibility study, starting of a project. Then planning a feasibility study, that is the second stage of that project. Then executing the feasibility study, that is the third phase of the project. And closing the feasibility study, that is the fourth phase of a project. So I told you 4 phases of a project: starting a project, planning a project, executing the project and closing the project. Now here performing a feasibility study itself is one phase of a product. That product will have 4 project phases. So you can take all the 4 phases of this project in order to complete this phase of a product. Good. See, concentrate here. What is the first phase of this product development life cycle? Performing a feasibility study. Now I will take this as a project. I will take this as one project. Okay. Conducting market research is another phase of this product. So I will consider this as one more project. So that means, what did you understand from this is 2 phases of the product is taken as 2 projects. So I told you that one project will have multiple phases in between. So you go to the project phases now. See, starting the project, organizing and preparing, carrying out the project work and closing the project. So now you are going to start this project called feasibility study. After starting the project called feasibility study, you have to plan out how you are going to do the feasibility study. Then you have to do the feasibility study. Then you have to close it. So that means this phase of performing a feasibility study has got 4 project phases. Similarly, conducting market research is one phase of a product. So first you have to start that project, conducting a market research. Then you have to plan on how to conduct a market research. So in planning stage, you will decide whether I will create Google Forms or whether I will go house to house and do campaigning. That you have to plan. Then you have to do it. Then you have to close it. So that means each phase of this particular product has got 4 phases of a project. That is what you mean by product versus project life cycle. Now what is a deliverable? This is very important concept. A deliverable is a measurable, verifiable work product such as a specification, feasibility study, report, detailed design document or working prototype. Now after every project you should get a deliverable. See here, performing a feasibility study, you made one project for it. What is the deliverable? The deliverable should be feasibility report. So once you do a project called feasibility study, you should get that deliverable called feasibility report. That you take it and keep it with you. Conducting market research, you did one project. After that project there has to be a deliverable. What is the deliverable? Market research report. You keep that with you. Running an advertisement campaign, that also is a project. After that you get a deliverable. Installing a product, after that you get a deliverable. That means after every stage of this particular product development life cycle, which is composed of a project, after every project there has to be a deliverable, and that deliverable is what I have shown here. It could be a specification, feasibility study, report, detailed design, document or working prototype. And know that deliverables can be part of project management process, are end products or components of the end products for which the project is conceived. So it could be an end product, or it could be a part of the product life cycle. So in this case it's a part. Performing a feasibility study, feasibility report is a part of the end product. Conducting the market research, the document is a part of the end product. So deliverables plays an important role which can be quantified at the end of every project. So what and all we learnt in today's class? We learnt what is a PMO, project management office. Then we learnt what is the life cycle of the project. Then we saw who are stakeholders, who are positive stakeholders and negative stakeholders. Then we saw the graph in terms of project costing over project time. Then we also saw the graph in terms of stakeholder expectations and the project cost. Then we saw what is a product life cycle and how to implement the various stages of the product life cycles as projects, and then we focused on deliverables. So in the next class we shall see few more details about the project management. Probably we may start directly with the first process group of the project, which is called as an initiation process group.